sitting down? Oh, okay. Why don't you come over here? Can you see everybody? Close door. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And I want to just point out something very quickly in the press release. There is a slight error right under the first person I'm going to talk about a little later is Annetta Nelson and not Annetta Wilson. Predators are their own breed of experts when choosing their victims. As you know, they look for people who are seemingly vulnerable, left out, and left behind. People that they think will not fight back, people that they think nobody cares about, people that they think won't be missed. But they're wrong. All of us up here care about them, our various offices care about them, their friends and family care about them, and we work tirelessly to make sure that we can bring them some modicum of justice, of respect, and of dignity, no matter what they're engaged in before, during, and after they were reported missing. There's been a lot said about this case in the media, but that doesn't mean that we acted with reckless speed or a rush to judgment. We spent a lot of time putting this case together. And before I go any further, I would be remiss if I didn't introduce everybody that was up here. From my right to your left, please say your name and spell. Hattie, spell your first and last name.
Good morning. My name is Hattie Abuzaid, spelled H-A-D-D-Y. Last name is spelled A, B as in boy, O-U, Z as in zebra, E-I, D as in David.
I'm William Lawrence, W-I-L-L-I-A-M. Last name L-A-W-R-E-N-C-E.
And obviously you know the chief.
James E.
Kelly Gleason, Kellie-Gleason.
Michael McGinnis, Detroit Police, M-I-C-H-A-E-L-M-C-G-I-N-N-I-S.
Athena Syringas, A-T-H-I-N-A-S-I-R-I-N-G-A-S.
Cases like this are particularly nuanced. They are very detailed and they cause a lot of work to be done. And everyone up here and many others who are not work very tirelessly on this case. I know sometimes the Detroit Police Department gets a little impatient with us, but we all want the same goal. We want to get the right person, and we want to get dangerous people off the street as fast as we can. You have met Hattie and Bill, and they are the ones that, from my office, who worked tirelessly for the last few months, put in hundreds and hundreds of hours putting this case together, and they will try these cases. I want to mention, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the tremendous effort in cooperation with the Detroit Police Department on this particular case, and I want to thank them publicly again. Accordingly, today we are announcing 8 new charges against Deangelo Martin. You know that we previously charged him in 2 separate sexual assaults that will be in court this coming Friday, and I'll speak more about that later. Mr. Martin is now charged in the following cases. First, I want to talk about the murder of Annetta Nelson, 57, of Detroit, who was found inside a house on Winthrop Street. Her body was found on February the 26th of 2019. Ms. Nelson was found face down with blood on her face on the floor. A used condom was next to her body. The cause of death ruled by the medical examiner was blunt force trauma. And we have charged accordingly Mr. Martin with 1 count of first-degree premeditated murder and 1 count of first-degree felony murder, with CSC, criminal sexual conduct, in the 3rd degree being the predicate felony for the felony murder. Second, I want to talk to you about the murder of Nancy Harrison, age 52, also of Detroit. And she was found, her body was found inside a house on Coventry Street in Detroit on March the 19th of 2019. Ms. Harrison was found also positioned face down, and a used condom was found near her body. The cause of death, as determined by the medical examiner, was blunt force trauma, and accordingly we have charged Mr. Martin in her case with 1 count of first-degree felony murder, 1 count of first-degree premeditated murder, with on the felony murder, again, the criminal sexual conduct in the 3rd degree being the predicate felony. Third, we have charged him in another case, the murder of Travisine Ellis, of 55, of Detroit, and her body was found inside a house on Lyndhurst Street in Detroit. Her body was found on March the 24th of 2019. She was found positioned again, face down, and a used condom was found near her body. The cause and manner of her death were undetermined, as determined by the medical examiner, because of the advanced stage of decomposition of her body. Accordingly, we have charged Mr. Martin also in her case with 1 count of first-degree premeditated murder, 1 count of first-degree felony murder, with the criminal sexual conduct being the predicate felony for the felony murder. And lastly, a fourth young woman, a 55-year-old, that's very young, was found in the city of Detroit inside a house on Mack Avenue. Her body was found on June the 5th of 2019. She also was observed to be face down, and there was a used condom found next to her body. The manner and cause of her death also was found to be undeterminate by the medical examiner's office because of the advanced stage of decomposition of her body. We have charged, again, Mr. Martin in that case with the same charges: first-degree premeditated murder, first-degree felony murder, with the predicate felony being criminal sexual conduct in the third degree, for a total of 8 new charges. As I mentioned early on, we have had Mr. Martin charged in 2 other cases, accordingly on July the 16th and July the 23rd, in 2 separate criminal sexual conducts. The calendar cases in those cases will be conducted this Friday, the 20th of September, 2019, before 3rd Circuit Court Judge Regina Thomas. On the cases that we've charged today, Mr. Martin is expected to be arraigned at 1 o'clock today in 36th District Court. Chief.
Thank you, Prosecutor Worthy. I just want to be brief and just say simply thank you to all our partners. Certainly, this is the kind of case that creates so much fear in our community. And so certainly it is our zeal to try to identify as quickly as we can and take a violent predator off the street. But I really want to give a hearty thank you to Prosecutor Worthy and her team for their tireless efforts. Certainly Detroit Police Department's homicide section for their tireless efforts, and certainly not to leave out, and as important, members from our community who work so closely with us on a case like this. Again, we understand the seriousness of a case like this, all the rumors that circulate a case like this, but we just want to remind the community that we're very diligent, relentless in how we approach these matters. But again, I just want to say thank you.
We'll take a few brief questions if you have any.
Boneta Nelson was killed in 2018, and it's our understanding that shortly after the man who was arrested for that case and charged, but it ended up not being him, that sometime after that, shortly after that, Deangelo Martin was identified as a suspect in that case. Can you talk about why there was that delay in either arresting him or charging him in that case?
Again, I'm not going to go into any further detail other than what I've gone into. Obviously, you know that we've taken a long time since we've suspected that she was killed. Her body, as you know, was found in February of this year. And we want to make sure that we keep all of our 2018. So we want to make sure that we present our evidence in court. Again, we have a lot of evidence to be presented that we're not going to talk about today, but it would become clear, I think, in the further proceedings in this case, why it took that length of time.
How many other cases do you think he's connected to, or could be?
We're looking at 2 additional cases where there might be some connection. I want to emphasize might, and they're still under investigation at this time. So there are 2 other cases where we're looking at Mr. Deangelo Martin for.
And those are homicides?
We're looking at them for possible homicide charges.
You said one of them is Brentwood, Yvonne Coburn, and the other one, Deborah Reynolds.
Again, one of them is Brentwood. I don't want to comment too much further on that. Again, we are looking at them. We don't want to also publicly connect him to a case where we might not be able to connect him to, but we're suspicious of that, and we are investigating him for those crimes. But it's a pending investigation, so this may or may not be over.
Appreciating you can't talk about details of evidence, etc., but can you talk at all about commonalities between these crimes and what may have linked them, or anything as you investigated in regard to, knowing you had a common suspect here?
Other than the commonalities we've already mentioned,
yes.
Because of our ethical concerns and what we're going to be sending in court, I can't go into further detail than that.
Talk about the brutality involved in all of this.
As the chief said, this was something that struck fear in our community. People were concerned about it everywhere I went, and probably everywhere he went. People were talking about it even before I could discuss anything, and even before we knew too much about it ourselves. And so whenever we have these kind of cases, and really all our cases, I don't want to make the assumption that we give short shrift to our others, but in cases like this that are literally striking the fear of people who live in these areas, we want to make sure that we work as swiftly as we can. But we also have to be as detailed as we can. And we have to be able to go into court and present a case that's going to stick, go into court and present a case with all of the evidence, and not just, even though we know that we thought we knew pretty early on that he was involved, we wanted to make sure that we crossed all our I's and dotted all our T's. And also, we had charged him on the 2 criminal sexual conduct cases, so we know he wasn't going anywhere. So we can take our time and put together a very, very strong case that we feel we have today.
Ms. Worthy, could you go once again over the commonalities of these cases?
Commonalities is 3 of the 4 were found in the same area of the city. 1 was on the west side, but the other 2 commonalities that I talked about today was the positioning of the bodies and also the used condom that was found near all of the bodies.
Are you able to say if there's any relevance to the positioning of the bodies or why that was done in that form?
I'm not going to comment on that at all. We'll save that for court.
With the used condoms, can you tell us how big a role DNA is playing in this investigation?
Again, I'm not going to talk about any more specifics of our forensic evidence. If we have some, we're going to let that speak for itself in court. And one of the reasons, I'm not trying to be coy, one of the reasons is we have a judge that we have to satisfy with certain evidence, especially our 404B evidence, that we plan to try to use at these trials, possibly linking them together. We want to make sure that we have not made any pronouncements over the year. We have not presented anything about that case other than before her in court. And so, again, we're not trying to be coy, but we want to make sure that we do our best and we have our ethical behavior toward this judge and our evidence.
How about motive?
And also for any potential jurors that may be in this case as well.
How about motive? Do you have any motive?
Again, I'm not going to comment on that either.
Well, you've already talked about serial killer and previous.
I think it's pretty clear that we believe he's a serial killer.
You know, I did talk about that in prior news briefings. Given my experience, I talked about a case I was intimately aware of in Los Angeles where a serial killer operated for 25 years. And it was recent. Several years back, he was identified and arrested. So there are things that we look at. Again, certainly the coordinated effort by this team certainly, again, identified a suspect and took him out of the community. And so we're confident it's going to go in the direction we hope for. But I respect the prosecutors that we not go into a lot of detail at this point. Very critical to successfully prosecuting this case.
Without detailing what it may have been, was there any new evidence in the case in the February 2018 case of Boneta Nelson? It says 19 here, but it's 18. Was there any new evidence in her homicide that led you to be able to charge on her case now as opposed to sometime last year?
Yes, but I'm not going to detail that. And I hope you can also appreciate that when we do these cases, we want to make sure that we we're focusing on the right person, that we're not charging people that are wrong, and that we investigate people that may have been in the area, and we've been very diligent in doing that. And we are very confident that Mr. Martin is the one responsible for all these cases. I also want to be clear when I say serial killer, it means because we've charged him with more than one homicide. I'm not speaking on the type of evidence that you may think I might be speaking of.
Is his criminal history similar to other serial killers' criminal history?
We are duty-bound not to talk about anybody's criminal history publicly. We can't do that.
What do you say to the loved ones of these victims?
You know, what I say to everybody really, and that's that we truly care about the person that you loved and the person that you lost. We truly want to make sure that we give each investigation the dignity and respect that it deserves. Some may feel that if you're involved in a certain profession, and I'm not saying these women were, or you're doing a certain thing or you're in a certain place, that your life has less dignity and engenders less respect. But those of us in law enforcement do not feel that way at all. We feel that your loved one was an important person, a vital person, a person that did not deserve to have this happen to them. And we treated that like we treat any other victim, no matter where they're from, what their economic status is, what their occupation is. We like to think that we do a good job with that and making sure that we treat all victims the same when it comes to the level of cooperation, the level of investigation, and the dignity and respect that we give each and every one of our victims and survivors. And that sounds like triteness, but we really believe that here in this office.
Is there a confession?
I'm sorry?
Is there a confession at all?
Again, that's talking about the evidence. I'm just not going to do that. It would be very, very short-sighted of me when you look at all of the hours that the Detroit Police Department and others put into this, when you look at all of the risks that people had coming forward, when you look at all the work and the man-hours that especially Hattie and Bill put in. I'm not going to jeopardize any of that by talking about any details I shouldn't talk about today. What's more important is making sure Mr. Martin is brought to justice.
Are you able to tell us what his attitude's been like, just toward everything, and talking with him, and his attitude toward the victims?
No, I didn't talk to him personally, but again.
I don't think that's really important. Again, you know, you and I, we talk all of the time, and I'm certainly not going to go into details of our investigative work, and that also includes attitude, behavior, during any possible interrogations. I'm just not going to get into that. I think what I can say, if you just look on his face, when you look at the victims in terms of their age, the age grouping is very similar, and that's not uncommon when you're talking about, and just in my view, in my experience, a serial predator.
Chief, you had said too that some of these women were linked to there were sex workers. Are they all sex workers?
Well, let me just say this on them. I know that spurred a lot of controversy. I had a very significant strategy when we were trying to identify the suspect, and in doing so, I knew I needed to reach out to a segment of our community that really is silent. They don't have a relationship with the police department. Sometimes they don't even have a relationship with their own family. But it was important for me to reach out to that community and to let them know that we care about them as well, and we wanted to talk to them. And the response was favorable. And I talked to a number of women who engage in that work, and it was helpful, and they were appreciative of it. And so at this point, we just want to move on and let the prosecutors do their work.
But just to clarify, all 4 of these victims...
I'm not going to get into... I don't want to get into the details of that now because I can't say definitively. But we knew that the suspect focused on a certain demographic. I can say that. And that's why it was important for me, as the chief of police in this city, to reach out to that demographic and try to learn more about a suspect. Because there were a lot of rumors circulating in the community. And we wanted to hone in on that. And it worked for us. But at this point, we're at a different stage.
So are you backing away from what you said before?
I'm not backing away, sir. I've used the word sex worker. I used it for a particular reason. I wanted to reach out to a particular demographic in the community. That was important to me and the members of the department to do that. And I know it may have caused some concern using that phraseology, but we needed to do it, and we did it appropriately and respectfully.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. All right.